What's going on, guys, and welcome to the FPL Game Week 3 preview, and we're going to be looking at some of the most recent news that is relevant to FPL, and we're going to be discussing some of your dilemmas. So if you do like the sound of that one, make sure to smash a like on the video, subscribe if you haven't already. Let's waste no more time and let's get into it. Alright guys, so we're going to start things off by talking about the best captain choices for Game Week 3, and as you guys can see, I've gone with Erling Haaland, Cole Palmer, Bukayo Saka and Mohamed Salah. And guys, this is sort of ranked in my personal order. This is how I would rank these players. So first would be Haaland, second Palmer, third Saka and fourth Salah. I think Erling Haaland away to West Ham is actually without a doubt the best fixture that anyone has here, in my opinion. So far from what I've seen on the eye test, West Ham look really poor defensively. I know they got a clean sheet against Palace in game week 2, but they realistically should have conceded a few goals in that game. So I do look at Erling Haaland, knowing that he's a proven goal scorer and a fantastic goal scorer in this Premier League. I look at Erling Haaland and I think, yes, that is easily the best choice. So if you are someone with Erling Haaland in your team, then I would definitely be going for him. And of course, the underlying data for Erling Haaland is the best out of any of these players here. Now, if you don't own Erling Haaland and you've got sort of like a Cole Palmer in your team, I'd be going for Cole Palmer. I actually do think, again, Crystal Palace looking pretty weak defensively at the moment. And guys, just a heads up, in a second, we're actually going to have a look and a deep dive and compare the defensive data between these teams. So we're going to have a look at the defensive data between West Ham, Crystal Palace, Brighton and Man United over the first two games and rank them based on sort of best to worst in terms of, you know, being a good defensive team. So yeah, we're going to have a look at that in a second, but this is just my opinion. I would go Cole Palmer if I didn't own Erling Haaland, and then of course Bukayo Saka and then Mohamed Salah. Of course, Mohamed Salah's expected sort of underlying data is actually better than the likes of Saka and Palmer. But I do believe Crystal Palace at home for Chelsea is a better fixture than Liverpool away to Man United. That is my opinion. So with that in mind, I do prefer Palmer and even Bukayo Saka as well over Mohamed Salah. You guys might disagree because I know Salah's got a fantastic record against Manchester United in recent years. But still, for me, just my opinion, if I had Palmer, Saka and Salah in the same team, I'd be going for Cole Palmer. But yeah, we're going to have a look at the defensive data now, guys. We're going to have a look at the defensive data. So as you guys can see, I've sort of made a table here looking at expected goals conceded and shots conceded in the box. We're going to start off talking about the expected goals conceded. So as you guys can see, we've got West Ham here with the most expected goals conceded at 3.38. That's a really high amount considering we've only played 2 games. So guys, not only on the eye test have I noticed that West Ham are the worst defensive team out of the bunch, the stats also do sort of back that up. The stats do back that up. So with that in mind, for me, Erling Haaland, without a doubt, you should be going for Erling Haaland. But we're going to move on. As you guys can see, in second place, we've got Crystal Palace with 2.98 expected goals conceded. So again, they're looking pretty poor defensively. And then we've got Manchester United underneath them with 2.53. And then underneath Man United, we've got Brighton, who actually have the best defensive record according to the data with 1.88 expected goals conceded. Now, in terms of shots conceded in the box, we've got, again, West Ham on 18, but this time Crystal Palace have the most shots conceded in the box with 21. So you can see here, West Ham and Crystal Palace are definitely the 2 worst defensive teams. So with that in mind, I think Erling Haaland and Cole Palmer surely have to be your top 2 captain picks. If you're someone with Erling Haaland, you go for Haaland. If you're someone that doesn't own Erling Haaland, but you've got Cole Palmer, surely you go for Palmer. Looking at this defensive data as well and combining that with maybe your own opinion on what you've seen on the eye test, I think, yeah, Erling Haaland and Cole Palmer surely have to be the top 2 captain picks. But yeah, in terms of shots conceded in the box, Manchester United on 16 and Brighton on 14 as well. So Brighton actually, according to this data, are actually the best defensive team out of Man United, Crystal Palace and West Ham. And with that in mind, you could actually argue that Bukayo Saka should be below Mohamed Salah. Like, Salah should actually be sort of the better captain pick over Saka. But for me, I'm not gonna lie, maybe it's because I'm a Man United fan, or maybe I've got a bit of bias there, but I genuinely think Bukayo Saka and Arsenal do better than Liverpool away to Man United. I'm going to be honest, that's just my opinion. So even though this data is here in front of me telling me that Brighton are the better defensive team over Man United, if I had sort of Saka and Salah in my team, I'd actually be choosing Saka over Salah. But that's just my opinion. You guys don't have to listen to what I say. But yeah, looking at this data, for me, this is the ranking I would give the captain pick. So in first place, Erling Haaland versus West Ham. Then in second place, Cole Palmer against Crystal Palace. And in third place, you've actually got Salah against Man United and Saka and in last place you've got Saka against Brighton. So that's sort of the ranking based on the data that you're seeing, not my personal opinion, sorry. That is the ranking that you're seeing based on the data. So yeah, I guess I don't know what players you guys have in your team, but if you've got some of these players in your team, you can have a look at this table, you can have a look at the stats, and then make your opinion on who you want to transfer in. But let's move on to the next topic. Alright, so it's time to talk about what to do with Newcastle assets. And as you guys can see, I've put Alexander Isak as a keep, Anthony Gordon as a keep, and Lewis Hall as a sell. But we'll start off talking about Gordon and Isak, because I do believe if you own these two players, you should actually be keeping them for at least 1 or 2 more game weeks. Now, first things first, I understand that Newcastle have been really poor defensively. Alright, they've looked so poor defensively. I know they went down to 10 men against Southampton, but even against Bournemouth where they had 11 men, they were absolutely shocking, if I'm going to be honest. But one thing I will say is that I actually think the next 2 fixtures are really good fixtures for Newcastle. They've got Tottenham at home, and in previous years, guys, Newcastle have actually scored a lot of goals against Tottenham. All right, I think a couple seasons ago they beat them 6-1. Last season they beat them like 4-0. They've scored a lot of goals at home against Spurs, and I think they can do the same again this season. So if you do own Alexander Isak and Gordon, I'd be keeping them. And to be fair, even after the Tottenham game, they've actually got Wolves away, and Wolves are looking poor defensively. I'm not gonna lie, they are actually looking quite bad defensively. So I think Wolves away is also a good fixture for Newcastle assets, Newcastle attackers to be more specific. So I wouldn't sort of rage transfer these guys out. I wouldn't consider them a priority transfer. I'm gonna assume that you've got sort of other problems to deal with in your team, like maybe you've got an Nkunku to sell, and maybe you've got like a Crystal Palace defender to sell or something like that. But there are sort of other problems that people do have with their team, and I just wouldn't sort of look at these Newcastle players and think they're a priority sell. So for me, I would definitely hold these players for 1 or 2 game weeks. Now, the same can't be said for Lewis Hall. The same cannot be said for Lewis Hall. I would sell immediately. I don't like Newcastle defence at all, and against Spurs, I think they concede. Against Wolves, I think they concede. And against Fulham away in game week 5, I think they concede as well. So based off that, I would be looking to sell Lewis Hall, if I'm being totally honest. He also got benched in the last game against Bournemouth. So yeah, he got benched for Kelly, I believe it was. So if you've got Hall, I will be looking to sell him. Now I guess the question you're going to point towards me is, well, who do I sell him for? Now in my opinion, these are the best options. These are the best Hall replacements. You've got Ezri Konsa as my number 1, without a doubt. The fixtures for Aston Villa are absolutely fantastic. So I would definitely be looking to get Ezri Konsa or any Aston Villa defender. It doesn't have to be specifically Konsa. It could be Pau Torres as well. I think they're the most nailed, they're the most reliable. So of course there is that 4 million defender, that young defender. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that name because I think I'm going to butcher his name if I try to pronounce it. But of course, Matty Cash got injured. So if Aston Villa do not sign Gw3, then you'd assume that cheap 4 million young kid will play in that right back spot. So there is him, but he's more of a short-term pick. So as a safe option, I would just go for Konsa or Pau Torres. Then of course there is Robinson. Now, if you guys don't have enough money to get Robinson, because Robinson did actually go up in price to 4.6 million. So if you have enough to get Robinson, then I'd recommend him. If not, then I'd go to a Nottingham Forest defender if you've already got Konsa. So what I'm trying to say is my number 1 pick would be an Aston Villa defender. Then my number 2 pick would be Robinson. But if you've already got Robinson, then if you've already got Robinson and you've already got a Villa defender, then I'll be looking towards a Nottingham Forest defender, because I do think their defense is actually quite solid, and for the long term they've got pretty good fixtures as well. So yeah, they would be my favorite Hall replacements, and sort of that is my overall opinion based on Newcastle. I think Isak is a keep, Anthony Gordon is a keep, and Lewis Hall is a sell. So it's time to talk about what to do with Christopher Nkunku, and guys, I'm going to be straight up with you. Sell him right now. If you haven't sold Christopher Nkunku, then I have no idea what you're doing. He's already received a price drop and it's now costing 6.4 million, but he could also receive another price drop tonight. Honestly, he could go down to 6.3 million. So if you haven't sold Nkunku, I'd be selling him straight up. I also want to say he got hooked. He got subbed off quite early against Manchester City. Then he got benched against Wolves away. But also yesterday in Chelsea's Europa League conference match, he played 90 minutes. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets benched against Crystal Palace, guys. I really wouldn't be surprised if he gets benched against Crystal Palace. So I would just sell him. Of course, the fixtures for Chelsea are absolutely fantastic, but still, for me, that doesn't matter. We don't know if Nkunku is going to play or not, and even if he does play, he probably gets subbed off early. So with that being said, who do you go for instead of Christopher Nkunku? If you're looking for Nkunku replacements, these are my recommendations in my opinion. We've got Smith Rowe, Leon Bailey, Morgan Rogers and Noni Madueke. We'll start off talking about Emil Smith Rowe. I think at the price of 5.6 million now, he's a good option. The fixtures for Fulham are also really good, and you know, Smith Rowe's shown that he can score goals. The only thing with Smith Rowe, the only downside I would say with Smith Rowe is that he's not really a 90-minute man at the moment. He is getting subbed off relatively early, so I would say if you do go for Smith Rowe, just bear that in mind. You're probably not going to be getting 90 minutes from Emil Smith Rowe. I still think he's building up his fitness slowly, so whilst that is being done, you know, he's going to carry on getting subbed off quite early on in games around the 60 to 65th minute. So I would just say keep that in mind. Now, for me, Leon Bailey and Morgan Rogers are sort of my favourite picks, all right, in terms of Nkunku replacements. I love the fixtures that Aston Villa have. As I said, I think Aston Villa have probably the best 4 fixtures that any team could have in the Premier League. Leicester away in game week 3, Everton at home in game week 4, Wolves at home in game week 5, guys, and then Ipswich away in game week 6. Those 4 fixtures are absolutely fantastic. So for me, I would really recommend going for an Aston Villa midfielder if you don't have one already. So I would go for either Leon Bailey or Morgan Rogers. I love Morgan Rogers because he's so cheap. So if you do go for Morgan Rogers, it allows you to invest more money in a different player or in a different area of your team. So that's why I do slightly prefer Morgan Rogers over Bailey. But also another reason I prefer Rogers over Bailey is because at the moment Rogers does seem to be getting 90 minutes. Now, will that be the case when Aston Villa do start playing their Champions League games? Maybe not. We're not too sure at the moment, but I mean, if Leon Bailey's still getting subbed off when there's no Champions League, he's obviously still going to be getting subbed off when there is Champions League. So with that being said, I think at the moment, I do think Leon Bailey's sort of goal potential is better than Rogers because he is the better player ultimately. So I do think Bailey does sort of rack up more goals and assists over the season compared to Rogers. But at the moment, based on minutes and the pricing, I just think Morgan Rogers does edge it for me. But either player is good in my opinion. Either player is good as an Nkunku replacement. And then we've got Madueke. Of course, some people might say it's a bit knee-jerky. Some people might say it's a bit of a risk. You know, it could be another Nkunku. But for me, he's just come off the back of scoring a hat-trick. He's just scored a hat-trick. He had a good pre-season as well. He was scoring quite a bit in pre-season. He scored a hat-trick in his first Premier League start. For me, there's no way this man can be benched. Absolutely impossible. You simply cannot bench a player that has just scored a hat-trick, guys. So I think Noni Madueke does play game week 3, and I'm going to be honest, I think he plays game week 4 as well as a minimum. Maybe not game week 5. Maybe, you know, Maresca might start rotating. But for me at the moment, I actually do think as a short-term punt, Madueke could be a great pick. And I think if Madueke does play and does get good minutes, he's actually a good option. I think the main concern for everyone with players like Madueke and other Chelsea assets is that you don't know if they're going to start. You don't know if they're going to get good minutes. I mean, everyone thought Nkunku was a good pick because we thought he'd get good minutes. Now, if Madueke does get good minutes, I do think at the price of 6.5 million, he's a good option. And he seems to be a player in form as well. I think form is a huge factor in FPL. It should definitely be considered when picking players. So yeah, for me, I do like Noni Madueke as an Nkunku replacements. But yeah, as you guys can see, these would be my best 4 Madueke replacements. Let me know, who are you going for if you do own Christopher Nkunku? Now, I wanted to talk to you guys about the Liverpool attackers and more specifically the Chiesa signing. So if you guys didn't know already, Liverpool have just signed Federico Chiesa from Juventus for around 13 million. Now, what does this mean for Liverpool attackers? What does this mean for the likes of Diogo Jota, Luis Diaz, Cody Gakpo, Darwin Núñez, Mohamed Salah? What does this mean? Now, I'll start off by saying this. For the short term, I don't really think Federico Chiesa will affect the likes of, you know, Diogo Jota's starting position or who else? Luis Diaz on the left. I don't think Chiesa affects his starting position, and I certainly don't think it affects Mohamed Salah's starting position either. So that's for the short term. I do believe Federico Chiesa is going to have to go through sort of an adjustment period where he'll most likely be coming off the bench. And as we've seen already, the likes of Diogo Jota and Luis Diaz are already getting subbed off around 70 to 75 minutes. So surely if Federico Chiesa is joining, that's most likely going to affect Mohamed Salah. Most likely, Federico Chiesa is going to be used as a sub to replace Mohamed Salah. That's all I can really assume. Unless Liverpool do sell someone like Darwin Núñez or Cody Gakpo or Jota, which I don't see happening, I think Chiesa is going to be used as sort of a substitute for Mohamed Salah. Now, that's in terms of the short term. So what I want to make clear is that in the short term, for like the next month or so, the next 3 to 4 to 5 games, I don't really see Federico Chiesa starting games. So if you are looking to buy Liverpool players for their good fixtures in game weeks 4 and 5, because if you guys don't know, in game weeks 4 and 5, Liverpool do have Nottingham Forest at home and Bournemouth at home. 2 great fixtures. And then even after that, it's Crystal Palace and Wolves away from home. So Liverpool do have some good fixtures. So if you are someone that is looking to get some Liverpool attackers in, I wouldn't let this signing stop you from doing that. I would still go for the likes of Diogo Jota especially, because I just think Diogo Jota, even if he does get subbed off around 70-75 minutes, he's still a good asset. He's good enough to get returns in the first 70 to 75 minutes of games. So I wouldn't let this Federico Chiesa signing stop you from getting Liverpool attackers, because like I said, I don't think he's going to come into the side and start. He's going to go through an adjustment period and sort of adjust to the Premier League and be used as a super sub. Now, in terms of long term, so 3-4 months down the line, does Federico Chiesa start? I mean, we don't really know for sure. I don't think he starts ahead of Salah though, I'll be honest. Even with the Champions League, I do not see Mohamed Salah being benched in the Premier League. I just can't see it. Again, I could be wrong because I'm not Arne Slot. I don't know what Arne Slot's going to do for sure, but it doesn't make sense to me benching Salah. Salah's fit, he's sharp, he goes to the gym, you know, he's maintaining a good shape and a good physical sort of mind to sort of carry on playing good minutes and in the Premier League. So I don't believe Salah is at the stage where he needs to be getting rotated. His physical fitness is really good. So for that reason, I don't think in the long term it's going to affect Salah, and it could affect Jota, Gakpo, Nunes, Diaz in terms of starts. I'm not gonna lie, it definitely could. In a few months down the line, I could see situations where Jota is benched in the Premier League, Diaz is benched in the Premier League, and it might be a Nunes and Chiesa that start. It might be a Nunes and Gakpo that starts, but there definitely will be rotation with Diogo Jota and Luis Diaz, and with Chiesa being in the side, that increases that chance of happening even more. But yeah, that's sort of my opinion on the Liverpool attackers. For the short term, I wouldn't let this signing stop you from putting Liverpool attackers in your team, but for the long term, for a few months down the line, it could possibly be an issue, but at the moment we just don't know. So for the last topic, we are going to talk about what to do with your Crystal Palace assets, and we're going to start off talking about Eberechi Eze. If you have this man, keep him, guys, keep him. I know you have been so unlucky to not get any returns in the first 2 games from Eberechi Eze. His underlying data has been absolutely fantastic, and even on the eye test, he should have walked away from returns in the Brentford game and in the West Ham game. But the key word here is that you've been unlucky. Luck is a huge part of FPL, guys. As much as some people may say it's only skill, no, luck does come into play, and you've just been unlucky. It's just as simple as that. Eze is a good pick, and if I was someone that owned Eze, I wouldn't be selling him. The next couple of fixtures are actually pretty decent as well. Chelsea away, it may seem like a hard fixture to you because it's Chelsea by name, but honestly, if you watch Chelsea, you'll know that their defense isn't really good. So I do expect Crystal Palace to score in that game, and I do expect Eberechi Eze to finally get some returns. And then after that Chelsea game, it's Leicester at home, and then it's Manchester United at home in game week 5. I do think the fixtures are actually better than what they seem, and I wouldn't be surprised if Eze does start to rack up some goals and assists, guys. Honestly, he deserves it, alright? On the eye test and by stats, he's been absolutely fantastic, and like I said, Eze owners have just simply been really unlucky to not get any returns, but that luck will change, trust me. He's not going to go through the whole season without getting goals or assists. We know Eze is a quality player, we know he's got goals and assists in him, and I think they'll come. I do think they'll come, and I think the thing is about FPL, it's all about when you, the timing of owning a player is probably one of the most important things, and I feel like you've been a bit unlucky to own Eze through the first 2 games. But think about it like this: if Eze just got 1 return in those 2 games, but played the same, you probably wouldn't be looking to transfer him out. So with that being said, I do think he's a good hold. He's a good hold, and I think the goals and assists will come. So I just think you need to be a little bit patient and just keep Eze, because I actually do believe he's a good pick. And like I said, he's passed the eye test, and he's definitely passed the stats and the underlying data test as well. So for me, Eze is a keep. Now, if you've got someone like Mateta, I don't think many people have Mateta, but if you do have Mateta, I'd say he's a hold for 1 more week. I just don't think there's a clear striker option to sort of choose for game week 3 specifically, I would hold for 1 more week, and then because Brighton have Nottingham Forest and Ipswich at home in game week 4 and 5, I would then switch Mateta for like a João Pedro for game week 4 and 5. But for now, I would keep him. Of course, there is the option to go for Menez because he also does have good fixtures, but I think I actually would prefer holding Mateta for the Chelsea game and then bringing in João Pedro for game week 4 and 5 instead of bringing in Menez for this week. Because if you bring in Menez for this week, it's probably not worth using another transfer to then go to João Pedro in game weeks 4 and 5. So for me, if you got Mateta, I'd be holding for the Chelsea game, switching to João Pedro for game weeks 4 and 5 for the 2 brilliant fixtures that Brighton have. So that's just my opinion, because like I said, I actually look at that Chelsea game and I think there could be goals in that game for both teams. I think Chelsea are poor defensively, but also Crystal Palace are pretty poor defensively. So yeah, I think there'll be goals for both teams in that game, and I wouldn't be surprised if Eze and Mateta get on the score sheet. But in terms of Dean Henderson, what to do with Dean Henderson? For me, he's a sell. But what I will say is I'm not really the biggest fan of making goalkeeper transfers. So I'll put it like this. If your team is in a good place and you've not really got many transfers to focus on, then I would look at selling him, especially if you are sort of looking to wildcard very, very shortly. I would look to sell. Now, in terms of who to go for Dean Henderson, I would go for, it all depends on your wildcard window. So if you're going to wildcard pretty late on, maybe game weeks 12, maybe game weeks 8 or 9 or around that sort of time, I'd go for David Raya, because I think the fixtures for Arsenal long term from game weeks 3 to game weeks sort of 8, 9, 10 are actually pretty good, and we know Arsenal are the best defensive team in the league. Now, if you are going to wildcard in like game week 6 or something like that, and that's quite a popular wildcard window for a lot of FPL players, so if you are going to wildcard in that time, for game week 6, I'd actually go with Emi Martinez if you can afford him. If you can't afford Emi Martinez, I would go for him. Now, if you can't afford Raya and Emi Martinez, then at 4.5, I would probably go for Sells, because I do like the Nottingham Forest defence, and I actually think they've put up some good defensive data, and even towards the end of last season as well, Nottingham Forest defence was actually pretty good. So at the moment, it does look like Sells is going to be the starting keeper. Again, that could change at any time, but at the moment, that's what it does look like. So I would go for Sells instead of Henderson if you are looking for a goalkeeper at 4.5 million. But yeah, for me, my number one would be Raya, and my priority goalkeeper signings would be Martinez and David Raya. But yeah, that's my opinion on those Crystal Palace assets. I actually think Eze is a hold, and I think Mateta a hold for 1 more week and then switch to João Pedro. But yeah, that's my opinion on Crystal Palace, and that's going to be the end of the video, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy the video. We are going to be doing a deadline stream tomorrow, so make sure you guys do stay tuned for that. It's going to be a good one, guys. But good luck for this week. I hope everyone has a fantastic week in FPL, and I'll catch you guys for the deadline stream. But until then, I'm out. Peace.